Welcome back to The Boys in the Iceberg, the podcast where we watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. As always, I'm Caleb Bader.
And I'm Harley Davis.
And Harley, I think that you had a little something that you would like to speak directly to the fans about.
Yeah, I just want to apologize to everyone, all 5 of you from New Jersey that listen to this podcast. I am incredibly sorry that you have to listen to how fast I speak.
I don't think it's that big a deal.
That's my personal apology to all of you. I listened to last week's podcast, and I speak incredibly quick, and I slur my words, and I mumble. My voice is awful, but I talk way too fast, and I'm sorry for that.
Okay, well, that's neither here nor there.
Yes, no, you're right.
So we're going to get into the episodes that we watched this week. Actually, the third and fourth episode of Season 2 of Avatar.
Return to Omashu is the first one we will be discussing.
And The Swamp is the second one. So let's get directly into Return to Omashu. Harley, what did you think about this episode?
It was awful.
You really didn't like this episode?
No, I enjoyed it because I wouldn't say we finally get to see her because you don't know who it is ahead of time. Like they don't hint towards it, but you get to see one of my favorite characters, Ty Lee. I just love the way she moves around and she just knows all the the choke points for people and can just knock them out.
That is really cool. How
or take away their bending,
like the chi points.
Mm-hmm.
We actually see that in this episode. So how this episode starts, it's like directly after the last episode where we see that Omashu has been commandeered by the Fire Nation, and Aang and everyone else has to figure out what they're going to do now. Are they going to try to go in there so Aang can still learn bending from Bumi? And Sokka is very opposed to that. He does not want to go back into the city.
And is that because it's Fire Nation controlled right now?
Yeah, I think he just thinks that it's too dangerous for what they want to do. Because he thinks that Bumi might not even be around anymore.
Alive, you might say. Yes, and Aang is very upset by that notion.
Because
pushed by Sokka.
Remember, Bumi is his friend from 100 years ago.
But it's completely plausible. Bumi's 1,000.
Yeah,
well, he's like 100 and some years old.
Yeah, probably around the same age as Aang, so 112.
Probably.
But Aang decides that he's going to go in there not just to save an earthbending master, which he could get anywhere, but he's going to save his friend. So they go through a secret tunnel, for lack of a better term, and it's a sewage drain. And they're going up the sewage drain, and after they get out, Sokka has a pentapus stuck to his face, which is just a tiny octopus with 5 legs.
Because he is covered in sludge from walking through the sewer.
Yeah, when they go up the sewer, Aang is actually bending air to sort of move the sewage out of the way, which he can also bend water now.
Not just out of the way, but over the top of him.
And back onto Sokka. And
Katara is doing the same exact thing,
yes,
but with water.
But then, once they get out, they think that Sokka might be a monster because he's covered in sludge. And Katara, I thought this was weird in the episode. Instead of just bending the sludge off of him, she grabs water from a nearby barrel and bends it on him, and then Aang dries him off. I thought she could have just done it all in one swoop.
Which I am now completely convinced, because of that small scene, that she can feel the presence of other water molecules in the air.
Maybe.
Because I was not paying attention to that part, but you were. And so I asked you if she actually looked inside at the contents of the barrel, and you said no.
Well, I don't know. The lid was off, and the viewer did see that there was water in the barrel.
But did Katara?
I don't know. Maybe. I'm assuming so.
Okay, because that part will come back. I will address that later on in reference to the next episode.
So after this, I'm pretty sure it's almost immediately they get into a scuffle with the Fire Nation. Because they're just walking along. They do see 3 guys, and they ask what's wrong with Sokka. And they say that he has pentapox, which is a deadly disease that's very contagious.
It's actually a real thing in real life. You guys should definitely steer away from pentapox. My grandpa Chong actually had it.
Yeah, and definitely wash your hands, wash your clothes, and then burn those clothes.
And then burn your clothes.
Because it's very contagious. So, and directly after that, after they met with these fire guys, they are walking along a roadway, I think, and they see boulders coming down some of the tubes that they use to move everything, the chutes more so, to move everything throughout the city. And it's actually, the boulders are going to fall on the royal family or the guy, basically the guy who's in charge of Omashu, the Fire Nation guy, and his family. And Aang breaks it up with some airbending and saves them. But then they immediately think that they are part of the resistance instead of trying to help them. So we see May, who is the daughter of the general or whatever he is. She takes off after Aang, Katara, and Sokka and is chasing them, and she is pretty skilled.
With knives or some kind of blade.
She has arrows in the beginning that she's throwing.
Well, she has many sharp objects that she throws. So that is her trade. She's very good at throwing sharp objects. She's like a female Hawkeye, minus the bow. She's pretty on top of things, and so we get a good introduction of what May, is it May or Mai?
I think it's May. Yeah.
May. We get a good introduction of what she can do and what her abilities are, and we then then we find out that there is they call it a resistance. A resistance.
Yeah, because Aang and everyone's running away, and the ground falls out from underneath them and then comes back up, and there were benders underneath in tunnels underneath the ground that had saved them.
There's only like 3 of them though. 3 actual people of the resistance. The rest of them are just like faceless people that just want to leave.
Yeah. Well, no, we saw. Okay, so there are 3 guys that they actually talk to, but then I think there's some more like troops or whatever behind them. But they're sticking to their guns, and they say that it's better to die fighting than to take everybody and leave and live another day. I think that's actually the view of like the main guy. But Aang ends up changing their mind, and he says that they need to get everybody out of the city so that you can stay alive and actually like win. Because if they're not doing that, then they're just gonna die very easily by the Fire Nation.
Yeah, you might say they can take our lives, but they can never take our freedom.
Or we either live together or we die alone.
Amen, brother. Amen.
So yeah, Aang convinces them, and then Sokka actually comes up with a plan to get the thousands of people out of the city.
Yes, it was quoted at thousands, not 1,000, thousands.
I still think that there's no way they could have organized, because later they said they'd do a head count. When have you ever done a head count of thousands of people?
They just have a census.
Yes.
Yeah. Back to the Lost.
A manifest.
Anyways, yeah, I don't know about that. I just kind of let that slide. With the, the head count. Sorry, I lost the word.
Yeah, so
I didn't care about that.
Sokka comes up with a plan to get everybody out, which actually draws from an experience that he had earlier. He thinks that everyone needs to contract pentapox. And so they get all the pentapusses and put them on people's faces, and then they have to sort of pretend to be like zombies, so they think that there's an epidemic spreading through the city.
Somebody had to go down into the sewer and just get
they had
pentapusses.
To get a ton of them because there's thousands of people.
Is it pentapusses or pentapussies? Like, how is that pronounced?
I think it's pentapog.
Pentapog?
Maybe.
Pentapow. All the pentas. They had to go get the pentas.
Yes.
Multiple pentas. And
Ford pentas.
Or they just use one penta, the one that Sokka
for thousands of people.
For thousands of people. It took them like 3 hours to get that done.
Yeah. But once we get it done, they put everybody through kind of like a Walking Dead style zombie boot camp about how they have to act so that the Fire Nation people think that there's a literal plague spreading through the city, and it works. They
surprisingly well.
Yeah, they all start moving towards the gate, and they say the general guy says to release him.
And now during this time,
while this is all going on,
we may have not seen Appa or Momo, but
we did see Momo.
We do see, or like they're not with the group.
No,
but we do see Momo. He gets his own little adventure. I've always questioned why is Momo in this series. You say because he's a reincarnation of Monkey Atsu, but that's a theory. It's a headcanon for some people, which we addressed last week as headcanon. But I don't believe that's true. But Momo's never really played a big part for me in this series. He's just kind of like Sokka comic relief. But this episode, he actually does play a good part. He does not get... They play it really well.
Yeah.
Aang has to go leave, and he says, all right, Momo, I'm sorry, I'll feed you when I get back. And so Aang leaves, and Momo is hungry. And I addressed that in the show. I'm like, yeah, I'll just let Momo starve, whatever. And then Momo goes looking for food, and he's looking through one of the windows, and he sees a big thing of berries, a big basket of berries. And he dives in there and starts eating the berries and throwing the seeds away. And where he throws the seeds away, there's a baby playing.
A little baby.
And you have seen this baby.
Whose name is Tom Tom.
We have seen this baby before with Mai and the general, or whatever he is, Mai's father. And it's the same baby who is just all alone in this nursery or random house or whatever.
I think it's just that they're like apartment thing that they've taken over.
But there's nobody else there. There is just a small, they say 2-year-old, just hanging out by himself in this room. And then he grabs Momo's tail. Momo tries to run away. The baby somehow parkours his way out of this house. We don't see it. We don't know how.
He takes a couple tumbles. He should be a dead baby.
Yeah, he should be a dead baby. And then he chases Momo across Omashu and somehow ends up in the group of zombie people and follows them out through the gates and into the woods. And they have their little refugee group outside when they get there. And Momo's there and the baby's there. And the baby is just kind of, turns out the baby is definitely the son. They don't know this. They don't know that they have the son because this is the head count. They say, hey, we did a head count and we don't have the right number. And Aang's like, oh, who we missing? And the guy's like, we're not missing anybody. We have gained somebody. And that was the baby.
Yeah. Who just happens to be the baby of the leader.
Just so happens.
Fire Nation. So the Fire Nation sends a hawk and says, hey, we got King Boomy. We'll trade you for this baby.
And that's a solid plan. Like, they just kind of lucked into the, you're like, okay, the heroes are kind of going to win this.
Yeah, because the general actually thinks they've kidnapped the baby.
He's very naive and stupid.
Yes.
The mom is a terrible parent.
Terrible parent.
And the dad is just dumb. I don't know why the Fire Lord was like, hey, you guys are pretty cool. You're going to get this place, Omashu, one of the biggest cities, other than Ba Sing Se, in the entire world. But, yeah, so it's going to go pretty well for our heroes here for a second, because you're like, man, it's a pretty good trade. They've somehow tricked the Fire Nation into thinking that they've kidnapped this son, which they haven't.
Well, for all intents and purposes, they really have, because it doesn't really matter how they ended up with him. They have him now. So the same effect, no matter like how they got him.
Yeah, but you think, man, they ended up with this baby somehow, and we know how, but they don't know how. And then the opposing, it's two separate teams, man. And one team has the team of the refugees, and you have the other team of the Fire Nation who has taken control of Omashu. And they each have something the other team wants, like a game of Survivor. And you're like,
is that what it's like?
Yes. And they're like, we're going to do a little trade here. And then Jeff Probst shows up as Azula and just ruins everything.
Yeah, so they actually negotiate a trade where they're going to get King Boomy for Tom Tom, which is the name of this kid.
The child.
And so they're going to go meet at a scaffolding place, I guess. They're building. I think it's the statue of Ozai that they're building that we see. Well, I guess we see it around this because Azula shows up, says that this guy's like, you're not going to go do the trade. I'm going to take Mai. I think it's Mai.
Sure.
I should remember this because I just watched the episode. But so Mai is going to actually go do the handoff.
Yes, instead of the stupid father and the terrible parent mother. And so Azula takes...
Well, Azula, this was the point I was trying to get to. She says she's renaming the town of Omashu to, is it New Ozai?
New Ozai, yes.
After her father.
Which then it cuts into the shot of a
giant Ozai statue.
The statue they're making. And that's where the trade is happening. So Mai,
I think it's, let's go with Mai.
Mai, Azula, and Ty Lee are now you get to see the trio, which sticks together for the entirety of the series. Now you get to see. Well, they're now taking the place of Zuko as the bad guy.
Yeah, for right now.
Yes.
Yeah, because Zuko, we're sort of, and we'll get in that in a little bit in the next episode, but he's getting a different character arc than what he had before.
Yes, and so you now have Azula as the main leading bad girl, is bad villainous. You have her as the villainous. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Caleb. Then you have Mai and Ty Lee as her little henchwomen. And
that sounds weird.
It does sound weird. I'm trying
that's
to be
how
be
sexist
PC.
It is. That it's just sexist that there's only henchmen and not henchwomen. Women can be bad guys too, guys. Okay, guys and gals, I should say.
Hinge gals.
Maybe
they just had a meeting and they're just like, dude, we got to think of something to name these thugs, and thugs just isn't gonna cut it anymore.
Thugettes just sounds stupid.
We need something menacing. Thugettes isn't like a dance troupe. Anyways, and so they're just like, man, let's go with hinge women. It's not a good one. Hinge gals, no. Hinge girls,
hinge lasses.
No. Hinge lasses was the next one. That was good one. Yeah, hinge lasses. So, anyways, Azula and her hinge lasses are. Is it lasses or lassies?
Hinge lassies? Let's go with lassies. Hinge lassies.
Hinge
that's
lassies?
A dog. That's like a evil dog.
Lassies is the dog. They're all just... Yeah, all right. That's fine. So Hinge Lasses and Azula are now the main bad guys of the show. They're the physical bad guys. Ozai is
the boots
still,
on the ground.
Yeah, Ozai is still the overarching bad guy in the show.
But they are surrogates through which he attacks the Avatar.
Yes, they are Ozai's pawns.
So, yeah, Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee show up at the scaffolding with Boomy in this coffin that's made out of metal.
And his head's sticking out.
Yeah. He sort of drops down. He's been suspended in the air with a rope hanging off the scaffolding. They just hung him up there. But Mai is getting ready to negotiate the trade. And Azula's like, hey, we're going to trade a baby for a powerful earthbending master.
And I want to pause you right there, because I'm totally on Azula's side with this. As much as
You think? Okay, no. I agree with the sentiment that she is saying. I am not on her side with this. Like, I agree that it makes more strategic sense to have an earthbending master than a baby, but it's a baby.
It makes me sound just insane.
She's basically saying, I don't care what happens to this baby.
Well, think about it. Okay, I realize it's been 2 years. The baby has been popped out 2 years now. Okay, it is a 2-year-old child, plus maybe some months or days. And Mai is already the kind of person where she doesn't form attachments. You can tell by the way she is. She just wants to.
She's a sociopath.
She just wants to kill herself. She's actually said that. She's like, I hope you're here to kill me. And so as Mai, put yourself in my shoes for a second and be like, man, we could have this super bad cat, Boomy, who is a master earthbender. Mm-hmm. Or we could have this child. Or we could have this super bad cat, Boomy, and then my parents could just pop out another child. And then in 2 years...
That's not the point.
In 2 years, we'd be in the same place we are, but with a master earthbender.
I don't think that you have feelings.
I do not.
So, yeah, Azula says, hey, don't do this trade. That's dumb. And Mai's like, okay. And then, I don't remember exactly what happens, but there's a little bit of a scuffle. And Aang's hat that he has covering his earthbending tattoos is blown off, and Azula is like, oh, cool. The Avatar's here. Now I'm going to catch him.
And this is the first time Azula realizes that the Avatar is, in fact, alive and well.
Yeah, she didn't know up until this point.
Because they all just did not believe Zuko. And Zuko was just on this wild goose chase. I don't know, maybe deep down inside of her, there might have been a little regret for being so aggressive to Zuko.
No.
But right now I'm saying...
Regret?
Like,
No,
man,
absolutely
that's
not.
my brother. Like, I grew up with him. But at the same time, she is so crazy that she's probably like, man, it's a good thing I ran Zuko off, because now I get to bring the Avatar home, and I get to suck up to my father even more.
So then a fight breaks out. Azula and Aang, they don't really fight. Aang's basically just running away because he ends up grabbing Boomy, and they head off down on the chutes.
Yeah, his main mission right now is to get Boomy.
And then Katara ends up fighting with Mai, whereas she is fighting with her waterbending versus Mai's daggers and stuff.
Also board bending. Katara's a board bender.
Yeah, she for some reason, instead of just like taking the blades with the water, she decides to flip up boards and catch them like that.
I don't know, but Ty Lee ends up with Sokka.
Yeah, then Sokka has the baby, and he blows the whistle for Appa, and then runs off, and he's going to take the baby to safety. But Ty Lee reaches up from the board underneath him and trips him.
But no, punches his foot, actually. Punches the bottom of his foot.
Same basic thing.
Yeah, but it's cooler the way she does it.
I don't know. Okay, that's fine.
I love how she knows the points of your body that control chi. And
yeah,
she can
and
block them.
Ty Lee is a trained acrobat, which is her whole thing. And we actually see in this episode, when Azula goes to find her, she is in the employ of a circus. And she is an acrobat in the circus.
A little backstory for Ty Lee there.
Yeah, and we get some introduction to how she talks about her chi and stuff like that. So she's in touch with the spiritual stuff, and she kindly, Azula says, "Hey, come with me. I'm going to catch Zuko and my uncle." And Ty Lee says, "No, thanks. I'm pretty happy here in the circus." And then Azula says, "Okay, that's fine, but before I go, I'm going to see your act." And Azula heads and watches this circus act.
And this is the point in time when, before she watches the circus act, before that happens, after she says that she's going to, you see the look on Ty Lee's face. Like, she kind of flinches a little bit.
Yeah, Ty Lee knows there's something up with this.
And she's like, man, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. And then you can see when she's on the tightrope doing her thing, like she's comfortable with it. But when Azula's there, she's like...
Azula is the only one there.
Yeah,
no one else. She did not let anybody else come.
No, she's a little on edge. And you can tell, like, man, I have to perform for Azula. Like, have to. Like, she doesn't... Like, she's not being forced to, but she knows that Azula has these high standards. And if you don't meet them, some pretty bad things are going to happen.
And the ringleader, or whatever they would call in this circus, actually says to Azula, mistakenly, that... if there's anything we can do to increase your enjoyment of viewing, just let us know. And so Azula promptly says, what if there was no safety net, so if Ty Lee falls, she just dies?
And then I think he just says, he turns that offer down, which is insane to do. And she goes, fine, set it on fire.
And they set the safety net on fire. And you can see Ty Lee's sweating because it's very hot.
And then she asks, Azula is the sheet I'm referring to, she asks about any dangerous animals. And the man says, the ringleader says, well, we have all assortment of exotic creatures. And she goes, great, let them loose.
Yeah, and then you hear it sort of pans up, and there's all these animal noises, and there's smoke coming out of the circus tent. And then Ty Lee says the universe has given her a signal that it wants her to quit the circus and join Azula.
Yeah.
So that brings us back to Omashu, where they're all teamed up and fighting, and Azula's actually chasing Aang down the chutes. He's riding on King Boomy, and she is riding behind him on one of those carts and is shooting blue flames at him.
This is not the first time we get to see blue flames, is it? Or is this the first time?
I think it is, because we only saw her lightning bend before.
Okay. Yes, Azula's signature flame is blue, which, as you know, is hot.
The hottest of fire.
If you did not know, kids, blue flame, well, I think white is the hottest. But it's mainly blue, and there's a little white in there. And that's pretty cool. I don't know if that's to signify how good of a bender she is, or just to signify how crazy hot she is. No, I'm kidding.
I think it's that she's just such a good bender.
Yeah.
She is a prodigy.
That'd be really cool to learn how to bend. Like, how do you do that? How do you just turn the...
How do you learn how to bend?
No,
I don't know.
Put yourself in the realm of Avatar for a second. And imagine you're not an earthbender. Imagine you're a firebender. And you're Zuko, all right? Just imagine you're Zuko. Is there a point in time where you can just be like...
Hurts.
My eye hurts. Is there a point in time where you can just turn the degrees up on your
I guess bending? It's just with training.
Man, that'd be really cool though.
Yeah, that is true.
Just melt, just like cut through things with just like ease. I would turn that into the modern world, and I'd just become a welder, and I would just not need welding
I don't think it's that hot.
I would just cut things all the time.
Okay, so
I'd be such a good iron worker.
Maybe. Then we see that so Azula's still chasing Aang, and they're just going down the chutes, and Aang's throwing air back at her. Azula's throwing fire at Aang, and this goes on for a while, And then Katara and Sokka show up. Actually, before that, Katara has been hit in her chi points by Ty Lee, and she is not able to bend.
And we don't, as a first-time viewers, you might not know what just happened, but then Mai says, with a little bit of exposition, not very clunky, but it's exposition nonetheless, she says, how are you going to do this without your bending? And then Sokka comes in and saves the day, I think.
Yeah, he throws his boomerang.
Yes, because he says, something about, it hasn't...
Stopped me.
It hasn't stopped me so far.
Yeah.
Comes in with Appa, and then picks up Katara, and then they leave with the baby. They still have the baby.
They're on Appa, and then it's about this point where Aang sort of they fly up beside Aang, and he uses airbending to flip Boomy's cage onto Appa, but he misses, and they go over the side, back down on the chutes, and Azula's there again, of course, because she's just good at everything.
I realize he overshot Appa with Boomy's cage. But couldn't he have just airbended behind Boomy
I don't know.
and stopped that from
Maybe.
happening?
Man, he probably you'd have to be pretty quick to think on your feet like that.
He can dodge Zuko's attacks.
I don't know.
Within seconds.
Harley, I don't know what to tell you about that. But it does happen, and so Azula's just about to catch them, basically. And then in the middle of the shoot, Earth comes up and breaks her cart, and then she comes screeching to a halt. And we find out that Boomy has been able to earthbend this entire time, because as soon as the Fire Nation came in, we learned that Boomy had just surrendered, and they put him in this cage so that he couldn't have his arms or his legs to earthbend, but he's been able to do it the entire time.
Because his face was not covered up,
yes,
as we addressed before.
And he's a 112-year-old earthbending master.
Which is insane that he can just bend with just this face.
And
that'd be so cool.
Aang's baffled by this. He's like, you could do this the entire time, and you didn't free yourself and then save the city. And Boomy explains that there are there are 3 types of fighting energy. I think he says it's called Jin.
Jings?
It's Jin. But he says that there is positive Jin, which is attacking, negative Jin, which is fleeing or retreating, and then there's actually a third one, which is a neutral Jin, which is doing nothing. And apparently there's 84 of those, or something like that, is what he says.
Something like that.
But he explains to Aang that he's going to find an earthbending master to teach him, who is going to be a master of neutral Jin, of just waiting and listening for the right thing to do.
And then Boomy uses his face to bend himself back up the chute, which I think they kind of took that idea of being able to bend with any part of your body, and this is going to feed over to Korra a little bit, I'm sorry. Kind of just ran with that for Korra. And
why don't you save it for your Korra podcast? Yeah, so that
you see avatars. You see an avatar, singular avatar, which does not have in one of the regeneration visions without arms.
Are we still talking about Korra?
Yeah,
I thought I sort of nipped that in the
you
bud.
interrupted me. I didn't like that, so I was going to keep continuing.
Okay, so yeah, an armless bender or whatever. Who cares?
I just think that
that's about the end of the episode.
Wow.
Right?
Don't interrupt me ever again. I think the idea of them bending with any part of their body is super cool.
We'll get into that at a later date. Can you remember anything else that happened at the end of this episode?
We get Zuko in this episode at all? Zuko in this episode at all?
I remember distinctly he or Iroh are not actually in this episode.
So it's next episode. All right.
So yeah, I think that's about the end of that episode. Why don't we get into a little bit?
Oh no! Wait, they give the child back. They don't just have the
child.
Oh
yeah. That's what it is. Aang drops in and sort of just lets the child go, and then flies back out. And they just think that the child walked all the way back up in the city.
I mean, he did walk all the way down to the fugitives. So
he fell
completely unbelievable
and tumbled.
He just parkoured his way back home.
So that right there is the end of the episode. So let's get into some trivia now. In the unaired pilot, Aang fought Zuko on a scaffolding much like the one he and Azula fight on in this episode, which is pretty cool. They brought that back. I really wish that we could see the pilot. I don't know if there's any way to get a hold of that. That would be really cool.
I don't know. Maybe there's a synopsis here.
In the Return to Omashu with Avatar Extra's bonus commentary, it was mentioned that the Fire Nation's plan was to make the entire city of Omashu earthbending proof. To this extent, they begin covering the entire city in metal, which is pretty cool because if you could take metal and cover the entire city, but they would still be able to earthbend the earth underneath the metal, right?
Maybe, but I don't know how that works because
how far away does the earth have to be before they can bend it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or if there's anything between you and the earth? I don't know. That's a good question.
I think the rules on bending are like precise in some areas, but very vague.
Yeah,
in
very
others.
vague. When the infected crowd is first seen, they move and sound much like classic horror movie zombies, as we mentioned.
Like the Night of the Living Dead.
Well, that is a classic horror movie, a zombie.
Well, they never do say zombie in that movie.
It doesn't matter. King Boomy told Aang that they would meet again, but the two of them are never shown together again in the series. That's a spoiler.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, King Boomy actually is dead. He dies later.
Are we sure that he dies later?
No, I was just saying that.
Is
I don't
he not-
know for a fact if he does
Is he
or not.
not a member of the White Lotus?
I don't know. I don't know, but all we know is Aang does not see him again.
That's fair. All right. Proceed.
This episode features a segment of music that is identical to the opening music from the Southern Air Temple. You'd have to have pretty attuned ears to pick that out. And the final piece of trivia, this episode marks the first time Aang encounters and fights Azula, as we brought up earlier.
Yes. There's some continuity here. We get to actually see the circus that Ty Lee works in later on in the series, and you get to see how cruel they really are.
Yeah, I sort of, while we were saying that, I was like, is that the one circus?
Yes.
And I guess it is.
Which we will get to that episode this season. It's called Lost Appa Day Stuff.
Days Appa.
Days Appa.
Yeah, and actually, Katara and Sokka were wearing the same cloaks to hide in disguise as the Fire Nation Festival in the Deserter, which is pretty cool. And Aang has upped his disguise game. Instead of just pulling his robe
Yes.
or whatever above his head, he actually has a hat now, which I don't know where that came from.
I think
it's just fabric, but
Yeah.
he just has loose fabric.
maybe. I have no idea.
Okay, so Harley, overall, what do you think of this episode?
I think that I want to read this little goof right here because this is indeed
That's
true.
not what I asked you.
I enjoyed the episode, but I want to read this goof.
We don't have time for that.
Yeah, we do. This is reminiscent of the episode where Han, the guy from the Water Tribe, tried to fight Admiral Zhao, and he falls right into the water below instead of the deck. In the scene above, Aang and Boomy are suspended high above the floor where Katara fights Mai and Ty Lee. When the chain is broken, Aang and Boomy fall onto a mail chute. They should have fallen through the wooden floor of the scaffolding.
Not necessarily.
Straight down. would have
Aang
fallen.
is an airbender. He could have been.
We did not see that happen, though.
It doesn't matter.
It does.
You don't have to see it
I want to see it.
for it to happen. Okay, so that's going to just about do it for everything with that episode. Let's move on to the next one, which is, I wouldn't say necessarily a favorite of mine, but I really like this episode. We get a lot of introductions to different things that are later to come, and this is from the episode The Swamp, which is about a swamp.
Yes, the swamp.
And it opens up with everybody flying, as a lot of episodes do.
As per usual.
They're just flying. And Aang says that something's calling him as they fly over a swamp. And Sokka really says, let's not go in that swamp, Aang. I'm hungry. Let's go get some food somewhere. And Aang says, okay, I guess I'm just going to not listen to the voices that are calling me down. And so they start flying away. And they are immediately hit by a tornado, which Aang tries his best to sort of airbend their way out of it, but they end up getting thrown down into the swamp and separated from Appa and Momo.
He recreates that circle from when they went into the when he created the iceberg.
Yeah, but it's air this time, so it breaks it up.
So yeah, Appa and Momo are on their own in this mysterious swamp that can just summon tornadoes.
and Sokka and Katara and Aang are on their own now. Well, they're together, but
Yeah, they're split up from each other.
Eventually, they get split up because the swamp attacks them after they tell Sokka to not attack the swamp because the swamp feels alive. And Sokka just does not care because Sokka's a realist. He doesn't believe in all that mumbo-jumbo magic stuff.
Yeah, they think that there's a mystical force in the swamp because Sokka keeps trying to cut down vines and stuff, and Aang's like, you should probably knock that off. I think that there's something else here that doesn't like you doing that.
Sokka just does not care.
No.
So he cuts it down, makes some firewood, makes a little fire, and they all fall asleep back to back to back because they are being watched and they need to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot of
all points.
creatures in this episode. And before we get to forget to mention Zuko and Iroh in this episode,
Yes.
they actually had they're back. Zuko and Iroh were not in the last episode, but they are in this one, and they've become basically beggars, just wandering around the Earth Kingdom. Iroh is just asking people on the street for money when they come by to fund their dinner.
And Zuko is very ashamed because he says, we are royalty, they should be giving us what we want. And Iroh says, they will. You just have to ask nicely.
Yeah, and so then a guy comes up, and I don't know if we've seen him before, but he
has some really nice swords.
yeah, he pulls out like two swords,
which
and
are
they
almost
were, they were like in one sheath.
They were
I
in
think.
one sheath.
And he
Strange.
tells Iroh to dance for him while he's singing for a gold piece. And he starts slashing at Iroh's feet to make him dance. And Zuko is just very humiliated by this. Iroh doesn't care, because as soon as the guy walks off, he says, oh, that was such a nice man.
He gave him a gold piece. But we'll get on. We don't get a whole lot of them this episode. We just get that scene and I think one other scene from them.
Yeah, and actually...
because this is mainly focused on the swamp. We don't get a whole lot of Zuko and Iroh in this episode.
I think the episode starts out with Zuko and Iroh, because I remember seeing a cart goes in front of them at the beginning of the episode, and it has masks on it. This guy's selling masks, and one of the masks is the blue spirit mask.
Which, if you remember, kids, is the same exact mask that got knocked off of Zuko's face.
I don't think that this is the same mask.
Same kind of mask.
Yeah, it might be. But it looks almost exactly like it.
When he kidnapped the Avatar from Admiral Zhao.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's most of what we get from Zuko and Iroh until later.
But back to the swamp, where we see Aang, Katara, and that other guy, Sokka. Yeah. They are now being dragged away from their campfire in the dead of night.
Yeah, there's
vines.
Vines creep up and start working their way around them and grab them all individually and yank them off in other directions before they can wake up.
And they all, Katara and Aang get dragged away into the woods. But Sokka stabs his little sword thingy into the ground.
Yeah,
and
so
fights off these vines, and you see a lot of Sokka right now. You're like, man, Sokka's actually that's at least what I thought when I rewatched this episode. I'm like, Sokka's pretty cool, man.
I thought it was cool how they did it, because it shows them all getting out of the vines in different ways. Mm-hmm. Sokka puts his sword in it and slices up with the vines. Katara uses water bending to cut the vines, and then Aang basically just uses an air ball around him to expand the vines out so he can get out before they retract.
All their little skills being used.
Yeah, I thought it was cool how they showcased the skills like that. And so now they're all split up, and they're wandering around looking for each other. And all three of them we see have visions of people.
Yes, I think
Katara's first, and she's walking through, and she sees her mom standing in the middle of the swamp.
Mind you, it's her dead mother.
Yes, the mother that is very dead.
We've established that she is no longer alive.
So Katara runs up, and she is very convinced that this is her mother. And then wraps her arms around her in a hug, and it's a tree stump.
This might have been the first time or the second time in the series that I was pretty convinced Katara's stupid. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never lost my mother. She's still alive and well. She's still kicking, all right, out in our little hometown. But if ever I was in a mystical swamp, I would not just be like,
that's my dead mom.
That's my dead mom.
I'm pretty sure she's in the middle of the swamp.
She's just here. Like that would never cross my mind. I'd be like, that's a hallucination.
I think you're being a little too harsh.
Well,
she
hold
was
on.
very emotional.
Hold
she
on.
broke down crying after that.
I would do the typical when you're in a desert and you see a mirage thing. I would rub my eyes, and squint and pretend like, man, that's not a real thing.
And then if it's still
And
there,
if it's still there, I would pursue it. I would not sprint at it. I would not cry. I'd be curious. I'd be a little speculative, and I'd be suspicious. But I would not be like, that's my mom. There's no traps at all around here.
I don't know.
She's dead,
I
but
think
now she's alive.
I think you'd have to have a dead mom to understand
You're
that
right.
feeling.
You go kill my mom right now. We will go down to a swamp that feels magical, and we will try to test this out step for step for step.
I will not do that.
You don't want to kill my mom?
No.
I think if I gave you permission to kill my mom, you won't go to prison. That's how it works.
Is that how it works?
That's
Okay.
how it works, right? Remember, kids, if you want your mom dead, just give permission to someone else.
And that's our public service announcement for this week. Please don't kill your mothers.
But anyways, so Katara sees her dead mom as a tree stump.
Sokka's walking through and sees someone floating in the light.
And it's Yue.
Yes.
If you remember Yue from the season finale and a couple episodes before, she is the princess of the chief of the Northern Water Tribe.
Yes.
Northern Water Tribe, and he falls in love with her, and she previously on Avatar, she she becomes the moon spirit. And that's cool. So now she's dead.
So she's in the middle of the swamp, which makes sense. She's a moon spirit. She can be wherever she wants, really.
She's a spirit.
Even though it is daytime. So there's that. But yeah, she's floating, and Sokka runs up, and he does the thing like, this is probably not real. And then he sort of turns away from her, and she's behind him and says, she's getting a little psychological on this. She's like, you didn't do enough to save me. And they never bring that up again.
No, you have to think though, Sokka probably hates himself.
Oh yeah,
Because he was chosen, or like he was, somebody needed them.
He
God
was her
bless
protector.
America.
He was
Yes, that guy in the army, or his dad. I will stop again. Start again. Okay. Her father needed her to be protected, and Sokka volunteered, and so he's like, I trust you with this job, specifically you. He actually wanted Sokka to be that person anyways, and Sokka, she died.
Yeah.
Like, that sucks. So that's got to be a lot of pain
Yeah,
weighing on Sokka.
we didn't bring this up, but what do you think he told her dad? It's like,
He didn't.
She
He
tried,
just left.
They were there for like 3 more weeks.
He's like, I don't know what happened to your daughter,
It's
man.
like,
She
was just all white and glowy, and I don't know.
her father actually does not know she's dead. Sokka dodged the subject. Where's Yue? Oh, she's down at the market.
Oh, hey, did you see this? They're putting up like a new shop out here.
He dodged the subject for 3 weeks until he got to leave. That's so funny. Yes. But then the third person we see is an unfamiliar...
And Harley, please do not mention any name.
An unfamiliar individual.
A little girl with a flying pig.
Yes. And you will find out that the flying pig is the...
I wouldn't say anything.
The house
emblem that's spoilers.
of Nicolas Cage.
I'm going to cut all this out.
On Ba Sing Se.
So, yeah, there's a laughing girl running through the jungle.
Why can't you just let me talk? Ever.
Because you're about ready to spoil
I'm not going to spoil anything.
So Aang is chasing this laughing, running girl who's running through the forest, and he never catches her. And that's all we get from that.
Yeah, it was weird.
And then they magically find each other. Actually, Aang runs and tries to grab the girl, and it turns out that's Katara that he tackles. Just drops his shoulder right into her chest, and they go tumbling through the jungle, wind up hitting Sokka. So now they're all together in what they think is the center of the forest, or the swamp.
Oh, because there's a massive tree, like the tree from Avatar. Mm-hmm. The Blue People Avatar, James Cameron. And then they get attacked by more vines, and then the giant vine creature with a little, I don't know, like an Aku mask is there.
Yeah.
And it attacks them, and they have a huge fight. And Katara just goes in for the kill 1,000 times.
Yeah, she's just like sending discs up and slicing stuff.
What is that? That's got to be some deep, like, emotional, like, psychological trauma for her to just want to kill everything with her waterbending.
Yeah, so while that fight is going on, we actually see Appa and Momo's side of the story. They're just sort of wading throughout the swamp when they get attacked, basically, by what we come to find out are swamp benders, who are basically water benders that are living in the swamp. And they are basically Hicks, for lack of a better term.
Well, they're kind of like Cajun.
Well, yeah, but they're portrayed to be just dumb, and they want to eat Appa basically, so they're gonna catch him.
Well, I mean, that's a big meal.
It really is.
I'd want to eat Appa.
So they chase him, and Appa's doing okay. Momo's throwing all of the luggage off of his back and trying to hit them.
Yes, turns out Appa is the next Kid Flash. He's very fast when he runs.
He's a very fast runner.
Which I don't know why. It doesn't really explain why he's not flying, but I was curious as to why he doesn't just fly away. That shouldn't even be a challenge. He should just fly away out of the swamp and just be like, free.
They might have explained something, like the air is heavier or something, but...
I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe he's just tired. I don't know.
Suck it up, Appa. Fly to freedom.
He did get thrown into a swamp by a tornado, so I think we can give him a little bit of a slack there.
Now, I've never been thrown into a swamp by a tornado, but I imagine that if I'm being chased after by Cajun men wearing leaves as garments in a dreary mystical swamp, I would definitely want to use all of my magical flying abilities as a 10-ton bison to get out of that situation, such as
and I'm sure
flying.
Appa was doing everything that he could.
If he can run that fast, he can fly. I'm just saying.
So
you're exerting a lot of
cut back
energy.
to the swamp monster, the vine monster that's fighting Aang, Katara, and Sokka, and it's pretty powerful.
It's kicking their butts.
They're having trouble.
Yeah,
because they'll Aang will send a jet of air that will slice its arm, and it'll just repair itself with other vines, and then just come back. And Katara's doing everything she can, and she's sending up like these blades or whatever out of the water.
Yeah, my gosh, so many blades, and it's cutting the thing all over the place.
And they find out that there's a guy inside there. It's not just a monster. And so I forget what exactly happens, but I know Aang sends some air down, and it sort of like loosens the vines, and then he finds out that Aang's the Avatar, and that the swamp brought them there. And it's a guy. What's the guy's name? Hugh, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Huu.
Yeah, and he explains that the forest or the swamp actually is mystical, and he is basically a protector because he found enlightenment at the base of the giant tree in the middle of the swamp. He explains to us that every tree in there is a branch out of that one tree, and so it's just a giant living organism. And enter the liberal multiculturalist propaganda that everyone's the same, and we're all just one big creature on this earth.
We're all just people, man.
So yeah,
liberal or not, I totally agree with that. We're all just people. If we work together, that'd be great.
We're gonna save that for a different podcast.
Just roll a blunt and get crazy.
So Hugh explains that the tree is connected with everything else, and Aang actually uses the spirit world to tap into the tree, and he sees Appa being caught in a net by the swamp benders and taken off. So they run over there real quick, and Aang immediately just sends air and just knocks the guy off the boat. And Hugh comes out, and the swamp benders reconcile their differences, and then they all head off back to the swamp benders camp.
And they reconcile their differences because Katara waterbends and then the swamp guy waterbends.
Oh yeah, and they figured out, we're both waterbenders.
That makes us kin.
Yeah.
And then they just settled.
Katara didn't look too happy about that.
Yeah, she was real like, what?
So then they're sitting around eating. I guess they finally got food. And
possum chicken?
Yeah, they had possum chickens. There were a couple weird creatures in this swamp.
Alligator, catfish, possum chickens, flying pigs.
Yeah, that was a vision, but all the same.
Also, there's a 10-ton bison and a lemur that can fly. All weird things. I agree with you.
I think that wraps it up for Aang and the gang. But then we get to see Zuko one last time, who confronts the mysterious man with the multiple swords in an alleyway.
Does he, or do we see the guy just get attacked?
Well, the guy gets attacked, and he drops his swords, which we then see are the swords that Zuko used, or similar swords. That's
what it is. Zuko had the swords in his ship, and then when the ship got blown up.
That's why I wonder if that guy was one of the pirates.
Maybe. Or maybe he was just a scavenger, and he just found those swords.
But then the camera pans up, or it starts on the feet of the attacker, this guy. It pans up, and guy with a blue spirit mask.
And then he
is
sheathes
standing
his
there.
swords, and the credits roll.
Yep, and that's a good ending.
Yes.
So we sort of, like I said, I like this episode because we sort of get little hints, like the girl that Aang sees. Who could that be? I don't think that they would just throw that in there just because. All of the visions that Sokka and Katara saw were significant to them. So this girl has to be significant to Aang.
Yeah.
I really like that. So Harley, what were your overall thoughts on this episode?
Twas good. Twas goot. Moi goot. I'm mixing languages there.
Yes.
I enjoyed this one when I first watched it. When I first watched the entire series, when I was a naive child back in 2005. Was that correct? And when I first watched it, I did not put two and two together with the little girl. But to me, it was just this weird, this phantasm that he just saw. And I was like, man, what is that? Mm-hmm. And never, like, after two more seasons, I never put two and two together what the little girl was and what she embodied.
And we will have answers
Physically
about
and mentally.
her.
Yes.
And spoilers, 2 more episodes, which is one of my favorite episodes.
It's a terrible episode. He is very biased.
I think that wraps it up for this episode. Let's get into a little bit of trivia about it. I think we already brought up quite a bit, but
Man.
the mask cart that passes Iroh and Zuko in the opening scene bears the same blue Oni mask that Zuko uses for his blue spirit alter ego. This foreshadows the ending of the episode in which Zuko has reassumed his identity.
Which is awesome. I think I like the Blue Spirit Zuko better than I like regular Zuko.
Yeah, the blue spirit's cool because I don't think we ever get an explanation of why he learned the art of swords and stuff.
I don't know, but I don't think he ever actually talks as the Blue Spirit either. So he's just mysterious and enigmatic, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Which this is direct reference to the episode, The Blue Spirit. Back in The Blue Spirit, Momo found an assortment of trinkets for the ill Katara and Sokka, including an old crown. This was when they got sick.
And I did see he threw a crown. I didn't know what that was.
The crown makes a comeback in this episode when Momo throws it at the waterbenders chasing them, while he and Appa tried to escape.
Okay. So I didn't know exactly what that was when I saw that on the episode, but that's pretty cool.
Probably a little fun the animators had there.
Yeah. Zuko gets himself new broadswords in this episode from the swordsman, who has forced Iroh to dance for a gold piece. So I guess they are new, but they are basically the exact same swords that he had, because they are special that the swords actually came together to form one sword also, and these were the same type. Hugh gaining enlightenment under the banyan tree is similar to the Buddha's enlightenment.
Yes.
Which there's a lot of Buddhist.
Well, it takes a lot from Asian culture.
Yeah, and that's a big
It's
thing.
very Asiatic.
In the swamp with Avatar Extras bonus commentary, the plant bender's pet alligator, swamp bender's pet alligator Slim, was revealed to be named after one of the creator's 2 dogs. Just that another classic trope where characters are named after the dogs of the creators.
Happens a lot. That leads into this one. When Sokka asks Hugh about the tornado, Hugh responds by saying, "Oh, I can't do anything like that. I just bend the water and the plants," which introduces the idea of plant bending and foreshadows the opening of any other kind of bending we may or may not see in the future episodes. And I think that's pretty neat that it's not just designated to the 4 base elements. It kind of expands into other sections. And I think plant bending is, I think that's earthbending, isn't it? Is that
it's waterbending.
It's a section of waterbending?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he's basically just bending the water in the plants.
That's fair. So that's pretty cool.
The swamp scenes, mostly when shown from above, similar to the toxic jungle from Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. So that's yet just another Hayao Miyazaki send-up. There's a lot of that in this show that we've seen so far. It's very modeled after that style.
Mm-hmm. This is actually the first time we see Katara and Katara and Sokka's mother, even though it's a vision. She actually makes her first real appearance in The Southern Raiders. which is obviously is going to be an episode later on, but it's through a flashback. So no spoilers.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, if you want to check us out on Google, we're at boysintheiceberg@gmail.com. You can send us emails there. If you want to check out our Twitter, at boysintheberg, that would be great. And thank you so much for listening. As always, I've been Caleb Bader.
And I've been Harley Davis.
And we will see you here next week.
Bye.